More injuries for the Heat as they travel to Cleveland to take on one of the best teams in the East. We'll talk about how they can keep this game close and what there is to learn from this matchup on today's Game Day Preview.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, credentialed Heat media member who covers this team every day. Little bit of a game day preview ahead of tonight's game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Tried to get this out a little bit earlier, but got a little busy around here. Interesting game tonight. The Heat go from beating the worst team in the Eastern Conference, the Washington Wizards, on Monday. They have to turn around, go to Cleveland, and then face the best team in the Eastern Conference. And they're going to have to do it without a lot of their most important players here. Quick injury update before we get to some of the key Battleground areas. And more than anything, I still think that there's going to be something that the Heat can learn that's going to be really important should these teams meet again this season, maybe even in the playoffs. But, well, they'll meet again in the season. I mean in the playoffs. But quick injury update. Tyler Hero, out. Head cold. Oof. That's not great. Bam Adebayo is going to play. He was listed as questionable. At least he's available. But Tyler Hero's a late scratch with a head cold here on the road. Kel'el Ware, Andrew Wiggins, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Nikola Jovic, Drew Smith, they're also out. They didn't even travel with the team to Cleveland, so no surprise there. So here is who is available for the Heat tonight. They've got Bam, Kevin Love, Haywood Highsmith, Duncan Robinson, Terry Rozier, Alec Burks, Pelle Larsson, Kyle Anderson, and coming back from his one-game absence, Davon Mitchell. And he's going to be key in this game. Also, something fun here. Josh Christopher, Kashad Johnson, Isaiah Stevens, the two-way guys, and then Kashad Johnson, the G League guys, rather. These guys who have spent a lot of their time in the G League recently, they're in Cleveland with the team. So we could see them tonight also. So, look, the Heat are obviously banged up here. They went from a team, like, all of a sudden, man, they looked healthy to now very unhealthy, as injured as they've been all season. And so expectations certainly need to be adjusted. They're going against the best team in the Eastern Conference, maybe the best team in the league. It's Cleveland, Boston, and Oklahoma City, a tier by themselves right now. The Cavaliers have won 11 straight games. Now, they are playing on the second night of a back-to-back, so Miami has a rest advantage despite the fact that Miami's on the road. Cleveland came back and beat the Bulls on Tuesday night. Sorry, I had to sneeze there. But the Cavs are playing on the second night of back-to-back. Evan Mobley did not play in the first game against Chicago. He didn't play on Tuesday. Evan Mobley's back in the lineup for Cleveland tonight. So he's going to be rested. That was obviously purposeful. He missed Tuesday's game only for rest, so it's not like he's dealing with some sort of lingering injury here. Nothing nagging going on there. So he's going to be fresh, and he's going to give Bam all the fits. Bam is going to have his hands full between Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen in the paint. So that's going to be something, a key battleground that we're going to have to watch here in a second. But back to the availability thing. Injury report. Bunch of guys on the injury report for Miami. Nobody of any consequence on the injury report for Cleveland. So not surprising that the Heat are 11.5-point underdogs in this game. And they're probably going to lose this game. That said, they have beaten Cleveland once before this season. They beat them in December. And when they beat them in December, a couple of things happened in that game. Number one, they did not let Davon Mitchell get off. Davon Mitchell, I think, had 12 points in that game. And the other thing was that they kept the possession battle close. He had 12 points in that game on 5 of 16 shooting. And Miami kept Cleveland off the offensive glass. They kept the possession battle close. That flipped in January when Cleveland routed Miami. Mitchell went off for more than 30 points. The Cavaliers had 17 more possessions thanks to offensive rebounds and turnovers. So when I look at this matchup, the key battleground, if the Heat want to keep this thing close, if they're going to keep this thing close, it's going to be because they've done probably three things, but really two things. Number one, they've slowed down Donovan Mitchell, who's going to be on MVP ballots this year. And number two, they've kept the possession battle close. They can't lose the possession battle by 17 again, like they did in January. They got to keep it closer to what it was in December when they beat the Cavaliers and the possession battle was more even. And they're going to have to do that by controlling the defensive glass on their side. And so that's why I think you'll see Kevin Love get the start again. Fun little side story here. This is Kevin Love's first time back in Cleveland since he left the Cavaliers a couple years ago. He's either been injured or unavailable. I think he was out for personal reasons the last time Miami played in Cleveland. So first time Kevin Love will be welcome back in Cleveland. I'm sure there'll be some sort of tribute video, a bunch of questions from reporters, stuff like that. Cool little story. Will he be motivated with his return to have his best game of the season? Because that's what it's going to take, right? It's going to take Kevin Love having one of his best games of the season. Look, he is not the play. He's a future Hall of Famer, but he's not the player, obviously, that he was when he was in Cleveland. That said, he's still a really impactful rebounder. And we saw that against Washington. He's a very impactful rebounder still. That's going to be his role tonight. Kevin Love, Bam Adebayo, probably starting in that front court. That's what I expect. Try to control the glass. Don't get underwater on the possession battle too early. That's the goal there. And then after that, is Kevin Love then the backup center? Do they kind of stagger Bam and Kevin Love? I don't know if they want Kevin Love playing that many minutes. We saw the last time that the Heat played, they had Kyle Anderson in the middle of the floor. Could they go that way again and just try to play, go small again and try to play Cleveland's big men off the floor, push the pace, get up a bunch of three-pointers? That might be their only option. But they need to control the possession battle, not just with the rebounding, but also by limiting turnovers. They have to limit turnovers, and then they have to try to force some turnovers. And they have not been an elite at forcing turnovers defensively ever since trading Jimmy Butler, since Jimmy Butler stopped trying in the beginning of January. That's not really their MO anymore either, but they got to try to at least come out on top on the turnover battle, which means limiting your own turnovers and trying to be opportunistic in turning Cleveland over as well. So I expect a big emphasis on defensive rebounding. Maybe they crash the boards on the offense when they're going bigger, and then maybe you see Miami go small and then just try to outstyle Cleveland and maybe get up a bunch of threes. And that's the third thing. I kind of said maybe three, but really two. That maybe third thing would be, when all else fails, just try to beat them from beyond the arc. Now, Cleveland is one of the best three-point shooting teams in the league. They're also one of the best teams in the league in limiting three-pointers. So easier said than done if you're Miami, but at some point you might just say, let's just let this thing fly. So look, there's a reason that the Heat are double-digit underdogs in this game. So, yeah, no Davion Mitchell will be available in this game. No kel'el Ware and a bunch of other players that are going to be out. So something to monitor there. All right. David and I will be back for our post-game reactions tonight after the game. But there is one key thing that I'm going to be watching for. I'm not as concerned in this game. Again, expectations low. If the Heat win, awesome. Great. Fantastic. Amazing. I don't expect them to do that. I don't think anybody expects them to win the game. So given the injuries, given that sometimes there's just scheduled losses in the NBA, that doesn't mean you just throw the game away or not watch the game or not watch the game intently even. There's something very specific that I'm going to be watching for in this game that we haven't gotten a chance to see in the previous meetings between the Heat and the Cavaliers this season. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. A reminder that your favorite NBA team is a free daily newsletter introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter. One stop for ultimate Heat and League coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Kate Kendall, Mike Shearer, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. So here's the key to this game that I'm watching. Davion Mitchell versus Donovan Mitchell. This, to me, can be very important. Obviously, the Heat did not have Davion Mitchell the last time the Heat played the Cavaliers. That's a big change. They have not had a point of attack defender like Davon Mitchell since like really that first year of Kyle Lowry, right? When he was still really good in that regard. So having Davon Mitchell defend Donovan Mitchell, having Davon Mitchell be Donovan Mitchell's primary defender, that's going to be huge. Like I said, when the Heat beat this Cavaliers team earlier in the year, one of the few losses that Cleveland has this season, they did it by limiting Donovan Mitchell to 12 points. When Cleveland came back and beat Miami, Donovan Mitchell went off for more than 30. They didn't have Davon Mitchell in any of those games. Davon Mitchell will start, and he will get the Donovan Mitchell assignment. He will be his primary defender. After missing one game, he missed the game against the Wizards. In Davon Mitchell's last game, he defended Jalen Brunson, and in the game before that, he defended Tyrese Halliburton. I think he did a good job on both of those guys. Jalen Brunson, he held him to 10 points, forced 3 turnovers from Jalen Brunson in that game over the weekend. So Davon Mitchell is an awesome point of attack defender. He's a bulldog. He makes it difficult for you. Now, that's the thing I'm watching here. How does Davon Mitchell fare against Donovan Mitchell? And there's a couple of reasons why I'm watching this. Number one, this could be Miami's first round matchup in the playoffs. It's going to be hard to get a lot of film off of this game because of how many injuries Miami's dealing with. Would have been great to see Miami's 2 big lineup of kel'el Ware and Bam Adebayo, because we haven't seen that 2 big lineup against Cleveland's 2 big lineup. That would have been an incredible test for that group, but we don't get to see that. So we're not going to get film on that, and that's frankly disappointing. But seeing what Davon Mitchell can do can continue to do against the elite scorers and the elite point guards in this game, that matters because of 2 reasons. Number one, this could be the first round in the playoffs, and getting film on this could be instructive in the case that Miami comes out of the play-in tournament and faces Cleveland in the first round. And number 2, and maybe more importantly, as we zoom even further out, Davon Mitchell's a restricted free agent this summer. These are the tests for him. And so far, he has passed these tests, I would say, with flying colors. I don't think that the Heat could be more impressed with what Davon Mitchell has been able to provide defensively. And even offensively, he's in a little bit of a rhythm shooting threes. Obviously, he had the big one against Indiana Friday night. He had that 5-for-5 game the other night. But defensively, that's where he's making his money. That's where this dude's making his bones. And if he continues to not shut down, but limit these opposing scoring guards to something below their season average, in today's NBA, that's what you're asking for. And having a guy like Davon Mitchell, a defender like that, you're seeing teams across the league find these guys and then hold on to them, whether it's Jalen Suggs in Orlando or Dyson Daniels in Atlanta or Lou Dort in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City also trading for Alex Caruso. Boston with Derek White. Like, you can go up and down the league and really look at the top of the league on a lot of these teams, on a lot of these playoff teams, and the value that these guys have in the league. And I've been saying it for years now. Maybe one of the most valuable things that you can have, just in terms of scarcity in the NBA, is a point guard who can defend his position at an elite level. There's just not a lot of these guys out there. Davon Mitchell is one of those guys, and he's a restricted free agent this year, and I think the Miami Heat want to bring him back. Davon Mitchell has said he wants to come back. He's been a great fit in Miami, great fit with Heat culture. But these are the games that when you're the Heat's front office and you're at the negotiating table and you're talking about bringing back Davon Mitchell as a restricted free agent and all the limitations that might come with that in terms of your salary cap and the other decisions that you have to make and how it impacts those decisions in the offseason. When you're sitting down at the table and you're thinking, is it worth bringing this guy back? These are the kind of games that you look back on and say, well, the path through the East, at least in part, will go through Cleveland. We have to be able to beat Cleveland if we're going to get to where we want to go. And do we think Davon Mitchell is an important part in our formula in beating Cleveland? I'm not trying to overstate the importance of this game. Obviously, Miami, Davon Mitchell doesn't have the help defense behind him with kel'el Ware shot blocking and all this stuff, but he does have Bam Adebayo back there. No Andrew Wiggins again, but still, there's things there, and there's going to be things to glean from this game. And so I think that's going to be really important. Now, the other part of this, too, is Bam. This is a guy who just became the franchise leader in double-doubles with 222. If the Heat are going to keep this game close, it's probably going to require a 223rd double-double. Kevin Love, as we talked about, his rebounding can be important. Davon Mitchell and Haywood Highsmith. Do we see them on the court together now that Mitchell is back? Is that an option? Because if Donovan Mitchell doesn't have it going because Davion's draped all over him, well, then they can just throw it to Darius Garland, and he's awesome. So do we see Haywood Highsmith and Davon Mitchell on the court together? Maybe. Perhaps. I think we're going to see a lot of different options. The G League guys. Kashad Johnson. Could they use his energy? Josh Christopher as a gunner off the bench? Maybe. Isaiah Stevens. I don't know if we're going to see him tonight. But I think everything's on the table if you're Eric Spoelstra. Do we also get another big Pelle Larsson game? He just scored a career-high 16 points. These are things. These are measuring sticks. What do the developmental guys look like against the best team in the Eastern Conference? That matters. These guys just spent a bunch of time in the G League. I think that's fine. I know there's a bunch of people that want to see these guys in the NBA, and I keep reminding you, just because you're not watching it doesn't mean development isn't happening behind the scenes. The G League is the developmental league. These guys have been playing in the G League. These guys have been working with coaches. Development is happening, whether or not you're seeing it or not. But they've been doing that a little bit for a while. And now they could be thrust into a tough spot against Cleveland. But what do? Throw them into the fire, into the deep end. What do they look like? Pelle Larsson was thrown into, I don't know if playing the Wizards necessarily is the deep end, but he went through weeks of not playing to putting up a career high in points in his rookie season and needed points. He provided a needed boost against Washington. Does one of these G League young guys pop and provide a similar boost for Miami? If they can keep this game close, I think that's a win. I think that's a win here. I want to get to some questions here. If you have any questions, please go ahead and throw them in the comments if you're watching live on YouTube. I do have a couple of questions from the Locked On Heat Insider community that I want to start with. But again, you have a couple minutes here to get those questions in on the YouTube comments if you're watching live right around 6:08 p.m. Eastern, about an hour before this game starts. But Adam writes in, any timetable on Andrew Wiggins, kel'el Ware, and Jaime Jaquez Jr.? No definitive timetable. Eric Spoelstra said that he wasn't overly concerned about kel'el Ware's injury. At the same time, I don't know how much I trust Eric Spoelstra's opinion or what at least he says publicly about injuries. This is also the guy that said Terry Rozier woke up with a kink in his neck, and then we never saw Terry Rozier again last season. But kel'el Ware dealing with that left knee sprain, they're obviously being careful. You can never be too careful with 7-footers and these knee injuries and stuff like that. There's no timetable. It's not expected to be a long-term thing. Andrew Wiggins, ditto, the right ankle sprain. I'm a little surprised he's been out this long, but I do think we probably see him this weekend, Friday, Saturday, in one of those games. And then for Jaime, I think that's going to be a little bit longer. And by the way, I don't know that there's a rush to bring back Jaime. It wasn't like he was playing super good anyway. I think part of that is not necessarily the ankle injury, but some of the other lingering injuries that he's been dealing with this season. I think for Jaime at this stage, with 20 games to go, just take your time. No reason to rush back. No reason to rush back if you're Jaime Jaquez Jr. Flavio writes in, since we're playing the Cavs tonight and our chances of winning are pretty low, shouldn't we preserve Bam and Hero, maybe even Mitchell? We need to win 4 out of the next 5 games on our home court. So obviously this was sent in at 3 o'clock, so this was before the Tyler Hero news ruled out with the head cold. But Davon Mitchell and Bam Adebayo are back. Look, I think that's fair. I think that's a fair thing to bring up. Just preserve them. That said, Bam's not hurt. And you can't just go into Cleveland on an ESPN game and just bench everybody. And that matters here. This game's on ESPN. This game's nationally televised. I don't know why, but it is. But that stuff matters, right? When you're on national TV, if your stars are healthy, and the league actually defines star players. They have a definition for star players. If you've made an All-NBA team or an All-Star game once out of the last 3 years, you are considered a star player. And unless there is a legitimate injury, those star players, especially on the road, have to play on national TV, right? Or else you can get fined and stuff like that. So Bam's going to play, and that's almost out of Miami's hands unless they just make up some injury. which again, it didn't look like Bam was hurt, so then you can get investigated, blah, blah, blah. Not necessarily a problem that Miami wants to recruit there. Other than that, yeah, I think you saw, look, Tyler Hero, head cold. Not worth it. Not worth it. But to the overall point about having to win these a bunch of these games, the upcoming schedule's pretty interesting for Miami. Minnesota, Chicago, Charlotte, the LA Clippers, and the Celtics at home in the next 5 games. Minnesota, that's a must-win. Chicago is a must-win, even though it's on the second night of back-to-back, and Chicago's been a little frisky lately. Charlotte on Monday, obviously, must-win. The Clippers are kind of slipping here. Can you win those 4 and then probably lose to Boston? But you never know. It's the Heat, it's the Celtics. You never know with that. That's going to be key. I don't know that resting Bam helps you do that tonight. But you do want to get healthy. And kind of going back to the previous question, getting Wiggins, getting kel'el Ware back sooner rather than later, that's going to be huge, at least for that portion of the schedule. Last one here from the Locked On Heat Insider community. Of course, you can always sign up to the Locked On Heat Insider community, not just for these kinds of questions, but also for our post-game questions. We always take the questions for our post-game show when we start with our Locked On Heat Insider community. You can sign up with the link in the show notes. Antonio writes in, how do you see the postseason play out for Miami? First round exit, second round, or do we make it at all? I still think that Miami makes it. I think Miami is looking backwards, not forwards. I thought David, my co-host, did a great job of pointing that out on yesterday's episode. You got to keep winning, not necessarily to try to catch Detroit as that 6th seed, because that's probably too far away at this point. But you got Atlanta and Orlando nipping at your heels. You got to keep winning. You got to keep winning. You can't fall into that 9-10 matchup where you are going to be forced in the play-in tournament to win 2 straight games to make the playoffs as an 8th seed. You got to win. You got to get in that 7-8 game where you've got 2 chances to win 1 game and either make it as a 7 or the 8th seed. So that's how I see it. I see Miami staying in that 7-8 range. Hopefully they get these guys back from the injury report here soon and they're able to stay in that 7-8 range. I think they advance. I don't know if they lose the first game. I don't know if it's Atlanta. We've seen that. That can go either way between Miami and Atlanta in the play-in tournament. But either way, you're facing Cleveland or Boston in the first round. Come on. I mean, what do we really expect there? Let's get to some questions from the chat here. Dino writes in, why don't we play Josh Christopher more? He seems so hyped up back in the day. Now he stays on our G League team. Look, I understand people wanting to see this guy. I don't think the Heat are in a rush. They've got a lot of guys in front of them. It's one thing to play Davon Mitchell or even Alec Burks, a seasoned vet, over Terry Rozier. Are you going to start playing Josh Christopher over Terry Rozier? I mean, that's a pretty tough look. And I like Josh Christopher. I thought defensively he was better than I expected in Summer League. Maybe we see him tonight. But I don't know that he's necessarily... If Josh Christopher is the answer to your problems, you've got big problems. Problems that probably can't be answered. But we could see him. We could see him tonight. Let's see, what else do we have here? Any other questions? Not really. All right, let's wrap it up there. Good little pregame show. Locked On Heat, thanks so much for subscribing on YouTube. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Do that right now. Hit the like button on YouTube. Comment. Let us know what you think. Oh, Jeremy, yeah, you got one in right at the buzzer. Do you think that the Heat should take a run at KD this offseason? Yes, 100%. Did you see him Tuesday night leading that comeback? Was it 19 points in the fourth quarter? Come on. Imagine a top scorer like Kevin Durant on this team with Bam and Tyler Hero still. Bobby Marks said the other day kind of proposed the framework of a trade. Would it be like Andrew Wiggins and one of Jaime Jaquez or Nikola Jovic? Some draft picks to Phoenix for KD. Something to keep in mind here. Kevin Durant, extension eligible this summer. Can be a free agent in 2026. We just saw this with De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox had a lot of leverage in that trade to get him to San Antonio. He signaled to the rest of the league, I want to sign in San Antonio. If you trade for me, fine. I'm not going to sign an extension with you. I'm going to be a free agent in 2026, and my plan is to be a Spur. Kevin Durant could say, and you saw the Spurs basically get De'Aaron Fox for nothing. Kevin Durant has leverage here. if he decides he wants to play in Miami, we've already seen the reporting from ESPN. The Suns will work with Kevin Durant to get him to his desired location. You don't think the Suns want to send him to the opposite conference? Of course they do. Of course they do. Go get Kevin Durant. That to me is the guy I'm watching this summer. Not reporting anything, but we know that the Heat called the Suns about Kevin Durant before the trade deadline. They were far apart. Can they get a lot closer on a deal? Kevin Durant, like I just explained, can help them get close on a deal. He can pretty much pick his spot this summer. And we know that he likes playing with Bam and that he's won at a high level in the Olympics. Gold medals with Bam. Kevin Durant. Do it. Do it. Miami. You'd be loved here. But that'll do it for me today. We'll be back right after the game. Post-game reactions to Heat Cavs. What are we going to learn from this game? Get your questions in. Tune in. Hit that subscribe button. Like the video here on YouTube. Make sure you're also subscribed on your favorite podcast app. We'll talk to you later tonight.